Hello and welcome to the ELS Essential Spellings video. So this video is all about helping you understand how we teach spelling in Year 2 using a structured program called ELS Essential Spelling. We'll walk through with you why spelling is important, what the program involves, and how you can support your child at home. Our aim is for every child to leave Year 2 as a confident and capable speller. So the aims for this video is to explain what ELS Essential Spellings is, to outline why spelling is important, to introduce a concept of the spelling code, to describe how spelling is taught in school, to reassure you about assessment and progress, to show how children are supported if they find spelling tricky, and to give practical ways that you can help your child at home with their spelling. Before we continue, I just want to talk a bit about terminology that we use with ELS Essential Spelling, and you will be familiar with a lot of these words because they were taught in reception and in Year 1, but it's good to have a recap. So first is phoneme, which just means a singular sound. So if you look at the three words at the bottom, you have cow, night, and car. With cow, there are two phonemes altogether, k and ow. With night, there are three. N being the first one, I being the second phoneme, and T being the third one. And also with car, there are two. So K being the first phoneme, R being the second. Okay. So with a grapheme, this is what is written. So phoneme is a sound, but grapheme is what is written. So cow has two graphemes, night has three graphemes, car has two graphemes. So the grapheme here for this one, the K is this one here, and then ow is a grapheme here where we have the O and the W. So it's basically the children understanding how the word is written. Same with night as well. They learn that it has three graphemes. The first one will be the N, and then IGH, making another is another grapheme that makes the I phoneme, and then T being the final one, where it's just a T on its own. And then with car, two graphemes. The C here makes the K phoneme, and then R is where the A and R come together to make that phoneme R. But the grapheme is what's written. It's A and R. Okay, digraph. Okay, this is where two letters make one sound. So with pie here, you got the I and E, they come together to make the I sound. With shirt, you got the I and R come together to make the sound. But also with sh here, that would count as a digraph because the S and H come together to make the sh phoneme. And then here with day, you have the A and Y that come together to make the A phoneme. With trigraphs, it's three letters making one sound. It's very similar to digraphs, but just adding another letter. So with light here, we got the I trigraph, the IGH come together to make the I phoneme. And pure, you got the U, R, and E come together to make the your phoneme. And finally here, with here, you've got the ear trigraph. So you have the E, A, R come together to make the ear sound, ear phoneme. Split digraphs, two vowels with a consonant in between. So with these, you have the two vowels that make a phoneme together. However, there is a consonant in between them, but they still are able to make that sound. So we often say to children that we often encourage children if they're not familiar with the word, to draw a line underneath so they know that the split digraph is there. There's just a consonant between them. So kite, for example, the I and E make the I phoneme. However, the consonant T goes in between them, but they still make that. It used to be called magic E, but we no longer say that. With cube, again, U and E come together to make the U sound, but the consonant B is in between them. And then cone here, the O and E make the O phoneme, but the consonant N is between them. So yeah, we don't call it magic E anymore. We refer to them as split digraphs. Two vowels that make a sound together, however, a consonant is between them. Segment. This is very, very important because this is what we use a lot in spellings as well. You break down the word into its individual phonemes. So if I ask a child to spell the word shark and they were not sure how to spell it, they would segment it. So they go shark. And that would help them identify all the phonemes, which will help them write all the graphemes to help spell it correctly. And then here, bright, they would segment it, b-r-ite. Again, that would help them identify all the phonemes and then help them write down the graphemes that go with those phonemes. And then finally, sail, they go s-a-l. And then that would help them write the graphemes that match with the phonemes that they've just used when they were segmenting. Okay, I'm just going to talk to you a bit about why spelling matters. Spelling matters because it's foundational to successful writing. When children can spell accurately, they can focus on expressing their ideas rather than worrying about how to spell a word. It reduces barriers in all subjects, not just English. Plus, spelling supports reading because understanding how sounds map to letters helps with decoding unfamiliar words. Okay, I'm going to talk to you a bit about the national curriculum requirements for Year 2 spellings. So the first one says segment words into sounds and map to letters. So this is a continuation of what they learned in Year 1. So when they were in Year 1, they learned that when they're spelling an unfamiliar word, they would segment it into its phonemes. Like before what I said about shark, it'd be sh, ark. But that would then help them identify the graphemes that they would need in order to write the word shark. Then we got learn alternative spellings for sounds. Yeah, this is going to be a big one for this year. They did touch upon this in Year 1 in the summer term. They learned that there's more than one grapheme for each phoneme. They even learned this in when they're doing phase 5. So they started to learn that E can be spelled EE, but also can be spelled EA. And they continue doing this in summer terms, what we're doing now in Year 2. So recently I taught them that the phoneme J has multiple graphemes, which is what they've been doing in their homework as well. So now they're getting a better understanding that it could be DGE, it could be GE, it could be G on its own, and also obviously J as well. So they're getting an understanding that there are various graphemes for different phonemes, and it all depends on the word that they're spelling when they're thinking about which grapheme to use. Spell common exception words. So we refer to this as hard to read and spell words. These are words that do not follow the phonics code. So for example, the word people has EO making the E phoneme. So we teach children that this is one of those tricky words, those words that are really hard to spell because it's not usually how we use the E grapheme when we're writing. So they're taught that way. And then we got here use contracted forms, which like words like didn't and I'll. They start to realise that didn't is short for did not, and the apostrophe takes away the O to combine those two words together. And I'll is I will, where the apostrophe removes the W and the I to make I'll. Then we've got use possessive apostrophe, singular terms. So they start to realise that if they're saying, for example, that's Tom's pencil case, that they've got to put an apostrophe and then an S when they're writing Tom's, because they're talking about the pencil case belonging to him. Distinguish homophones and near homophones. Okay, so these are words basically that sound the same, but they're spelt differently. So the classic one is there. So we say it's over there, or you could say that their pencil case. So they are spelt differently because they're put in different contexts. So there be like when you talk about where something is, and there when it's talk about it belonging to someone. So they're taught that those words are spelled differently because they have different definitions, but even though they sound the same, that they have different spellings for them depending on what context they're put in. And then we've got add suffixes, which are words like meant, like disappointment, for example, ness, full, less, ly. We're going to be starting doing this during the autumn 2 term, so they get a better idea of like how they can add these suffixes to the end of words, make a new word. Okay, I'm going to talk to you now about the challenge of English spelling. English spelling is very tricky. I think we all can agree on that. There are 44 sounds in English, but more than 200 ways to spell them. So, for example, the phoneme A can be spelled as AI, AY, AE is a split digraph, EA, and even EIGH, like for the word 8. That's why we don't rely on memorizing word lists alone. Instead, we teach children the code behind the spelling system so they can apply it more broadly. So here, for example, this poster that I've included in this slide, this includes all the alternative graphemes for each sound. So it helps children realize that each phoneme that they've learned has multiple graphemes, which helps them understand which different ways of spelling of using them in their spellings. But as they get more and more confident with it, they'll be able to understand when to use a specific grapheme for a specific word. So what is ELS Essential Spelling? ELS Essential Spelling is a follow-on program from the phonics work your children have done in reception and in Year 1. It's built around teaching spelling through understanding rather than just testing. It helps children deepen their knowledge of the sounds they already know and explore how these sounds are represented in written English. So I'm just going to give you a breakdown of what it's like throughout the year. So this is the autumn one here, where we've just been relooking at alternative graphemes for certain phonemes. So we continue doing that in the autumn too as well, with their various alternative graphemes. So it helps the children have a better understanding of how the English language has various graphemes for certain phonemes. During Spring 1, the children are taught more about various suffixes and how they affect the root word. So they get an understanding that when they add certain suffixes to a root word, that the consonant at the end of that root word will be doubled. For example, with words that where you add ed at the end, ed, to make it past tense, the consonant will be doubled before adding the suffix onto it. And then during the Spring 2, we look a lot more at apostrophes, but also continue our work on suffixes. So during this term, they'll get a stronger understanding of how suffixes work, which is a big part of their spellings. And during the summer term, we will continue looking at various suffixes, but in summer 2 in particular, we start looking at how when we add a suffix to certain words, that the consonant can be dropped or it can be changed to a different letter. So let's take, for example, the word worry. It has a Y at the end, but if you add ed at the end to make it become worried, you would drop that Y and you'd replace it with an I and then ed. So children get a better understanding of that during this summer term. But then at the end, there's a block where I will look at where the weaknesses are with their spelling, any areas I think they need to improve on. And then for those 2 weeks there, I will focus on those areas of spellings. I'm now going to talk to you a bit about how ELS Essential Spelling is taught. So spelling is taught in 3 structured sessions each week. Each lesson includes a clear routine, revisiting previous learning, introducing new content, practicing it together, and then applying it in a meaningful way. This consistency helps children feel secure and confident, and the structure is very similar to what the children did in reception and Year 1. So it's a nice transition from what they did in phonics to how they're doing it, how they learn it in the spellings. So you'll see here it says use of the spelling sequence. This is something that they've already been taught. It's something that they've been doing ever since reception. So I'm just going to go through it with you now because this is a key tool in what we use to help children with spelling. So this here guides the children to break down words into phonemes and then rebuild them into written form. So what they'll do first is they will say the word. So it'll be first like maybe I will say the word and then the children say it, I say it, then they say it. So they hear me say it so they get a good understanding of the pronunciation of the word. And then they would stretch the word so they'd say it slowly so they can really start to hear those phonemes that are included in the word. And then what they'll do is robot talk, which is basically segmenting. They will break down the word into its individual phonemes. And then what they will do is they will segment it again, but using their fingers this time. So break it down sounds, but each finger will represent each phoneme that they say. And then they will count how many phonemes is in the word. And then they will again say the word for one last time. So doing all this helps them identify the phonemes in the word, which then help them recognize the graphemes that they need to use when writing the word. So I'm now going to show you all the slides from a previously taught lesson, just so you got a good idea of how the lesson is taught. So first I would be introducing children what the objective is for today's lesson. So it says here we're going to be looking at different spellings for the sound. So what I would do first is show them all the graphemes, the different graphemes that can be used for the phoneme. So first we have which one we're very familiar with already, and we have a word that they'll be familiar with, umbrella. And then we have here, O, for monkey. So they start to see already that words like monkey are spelt with an O as the phoneme, not the usual And then you got OU. They know this as the ow phoneme, as the ow grapheme. However, from looking at here, they know it can be used for the word tough. And then this one, they know this as oo, but also they know it as which is what they learned when they were doing phase 3 in reception. So yeah, really this one and this one are the ones that they're going to be most familiar with. But these two, they need a bit more practice. That's why we're doing it in this lesson. Okay. And then we say that we're going to be looking at this grapheme first. So I would then get the children to practice pronouncing the phoneme correctly. So I would say and then get them to say it. So there's a lot of I say it, you say it. So I want to make sure that they got the pronunciation correctly. They got the pronunciation correct, but also make sure that they know that this grapheme can make the phoneme. Okay, now I've got a good understanding of the grapheme that we are going to be focusing on. I would then show them a sentence. The way I do it is this. I would read the sentence to them first, and I want the children just to listen to how I pronounce the words, but also look at the words as I'm reading them. And then what we do is we read it together as a class. And finally, they would read it on their own. But then I would say to them, point to the word that has the grapheme that we're focusing on. So get all children to point to word. That means make sure that all of them are included. And then I would tell them to say the word that has the grapheme we're focusing on. Once they say the word, I reveal it to check if they understand, make sure that they know it's mother, not all the other words. And then usually we'd have another sentence with a different word with that grapheme again, just to make sure they got a secure understanding that we are focusing on the grapheme that makes it a phoneme. Okay, what we would do then is teach children to read these words. This can go back to our phonics, where we get them to segment the word and blend them together, but it gives them a good understanding of various words that do have the grapheme O making the phoneme. So monkey, month, honey, front, glove, and London. So we'd make sure first, if the children are able to read, we'd read it together as a class, but I would first point out to them that it has this grapheme here that makes it phoneme. Just make sure the children realize that is still what we're focusing on, and make sure that helps them pronounce that word correctly. Okay, then what we do is this. Okay, I show them the word first, but then we use the spelling sequence again. We have the word in front of them there, but we still do the I say it, you say it. So I'll get the children to say front a few times. So I would say it first, and they say it, make sure they got the pronunciation correct. Say it slowly so they can identify all the phonemes. Segment it so they can really hear all those phonemes broken down. Count the phonemes so they start to realize how many, they first do use their fingers to break down it into sounds, and then they would count the sounds, the phonemes, and then say it one more time. And then what we would do together as a class is identify the different graphemes. So when they do front to be f, nt, so they know that it's got 5 graphemes altogether, then we would highlight the 5 graphemes, which would be f, nt. Okay, practice time. This is where I get an understanding of where the children are up to with this learning. See whether they've understood what has been taught. I would remind them that they have to use this spelling sequence. And if the children are practicing spelling at home, please make sure that they are using this sequence here. It will help them massively. So I call out the word, for example, this one's front, and then they will say it slowly, robot talk it, sound it out using their fingers, and then count the sounds on their fingers, then say it one more time, and then write the word. But by this point, because we've been talking a lot about how the grapheme O can make the phoneme for these words, it will hopefully help them understand that when they're writing these words down. Okay, and then what I would do is this. We will look at this word and we realize that it's got a missing grapheme. So we'd have to think about which one goes there. This is just to make sure, just to remind them again that the word monkey, for example, has an R and not an U. It's like reinforcing that. Then what we would do is we would read the sentence. So what I would do first is I would read it to them. We read it together as a class, and then they read it. Okay. But then we talk about the fact that coloured has been highlighted in blue. They know that that means it has been spelled incorrectly. At this point, I would get the children again, like what was happening in the previous slide. I would get them to write down the word in their books, so I can go around there and see whether they understand. With coloured, instead of an there, it needs to be an making the phoneme. And then what we would do is we'd apply it in our books. These books are very similar to what they had in reception and in year 1, which is great. So they got an understanding of what's expected for each lesson. So first they would, this bit here at the top, they would just highlight the word that has the grapheme that we've been focusing on. Then you got 3 pictures here. And what the children would have to do is write the correct spelling for each word. Then you got 3 sentences here. Each sentence has a word that's not been spelled correctly. The first 2 are highlighted for them, so children it helps children understand which word they have to correct. But the third one doesn't, so that's where they have to read them. They have to make sure they read it carefully, and to make sure that they can identify which word has not been spelt correctly. So for all those 3 sentences, they would have to spell them correctly. Okay. So assessment and practice. We don't use weekly spelling tests in the traditional sense. So I remember when I was at school, the way I was taught how to spell words was I was given a few words to learn, and then we'd have a test to see whether we were able to memorize them. I think the only issue with that is once you do that test, you move on to other words, and then if you don't apply those words, you are later further down the line going to forget how to spell those words. So we don't do it in that typical spelling test way. So what we do instead is we focus on applying spelling knowledge in context. One activity is called spell checkers, where children correct misspelled words. So in their English books, if I notice there's a word in there that they've misspelt, I put an SP there, which children know that means they have to correct that spelling, and so they go back to it and then correct the spellings. As the year will go on, what we will do is start to encourage them to check for themselves, because they'll get a stronger understanding of how to spell certain words, and also as well have them review their partner's work as well to help their partner as well with spelling words correctly. So this all teaches them to proofread and think critically about their spelling choices. So yeah, it's really important this year that when children are writing their work, they look back and they read through it to check, not just for what they've written, like with the context of what like an information text they're writing or a story they're writing, but also to check that the words that they're writing are spelt correctly. Okay, so I'm just going to talk to you now about assessment and practice. So we don't use weekly spelling tests in the traditional sense. I remember when I was at school, we'd have a spelling test every week. So we'd be given words to practice over the weekend and during the week. And then on Friday, we would have that spelling test. And then we were given new words to learn. The only issue there is we were learning for a test. We have to memorize these words, then we move on to new words, not really look back on those old words that we practice on. What we want to do here instead is focus on applying spelling knowledge in context. One activity is called spell checkers, where children correct misspelled words. So in their English book, what I often do, if I notice there's a word in there that they've misspelled, I'd put an SP there, which the child then knows that means that they've spelled that word wrong, and then they'd have to correct it. And we want to also, regarding the whole practicing to assess their work, is proofreading their work. So when they're reading the work themselves, they'll become more confident with this as the year goes on. But want to get them to actually read over their work and see if there are any words that they have misspelt, and then they can correct them. Also, they will have opportunities where they look at their partner's work, see if they can identify any words that their partner might have misspelled, just to support them with that as well. So this is great all for independent writing, because we want the children to become more independent of their writing and start to see any mistakes that they've made in their work so they're able to correct them. Obviously, we've said already, spelling is very tricky. It's not something that you can learn overnight. It's something that you have to practice on a daily basis and also be taught as well. It's not just a case of just memorizing the words. It's also being able to understand the alphabetic code. So what we do every half term is have an assessment period. So it'll be usually the 5th week of every half term where I will give them an assessment quiz. I call it a quiz. We don't want to call it a test, but I give them that to do, where I call out different words and then they write them down. But also they have on a sheet where they have like 3 different spellings for one word, and only one of them is correct. They have to circle one which is correct. So it's basically a summary of what they've learned that half term and see how much of it they can recall. But then the following half term, we do that one again to see whether any misconceptions they may have had during that previous half term that they now understand. And then the following week, we'd have the new assessment paper that they would do. So we're constantly going back to what we have previously learned to make sure that they got a better understanding of the spellings that they have been taught. And it also gives me a good opportunity to see where they're currently at their spellings and what gaps they have in their learning and how we can address that. Okay, support for struggling spellers. If a child is finding spelling tricky, we don't leave them behind. Instead, we revisit the phonics code using interventions or small group work. The program is designed to be inclusive, ensuring that all children have the support they need in order to progress. So if there are some children that I identify are struggling with spellings, I would arrange interventions with a teaching assistant so they can go through any gaps in their learning to help them develop their understanding more of spelling. So like with ELS phonics, where they say keep up, not catch up, it's the exact same here. So they will continue to learn along with the rest of their peers in the class, but they will have those interventions in place as well. So just basically to bridge any of those gaps that they may have when learning spellings. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are asking, how can you as parents help at home? So at home, you can support your child by encouraging them to notice spellings in books and helping them spot patterns, or simply asking them what they have learned in their spelling lessons. So going back to the books, going back to what notice spellings, when you're reading a book to them, if you notice that there's a certain word that has a alternative grapheme, let's say for example the word bridge, you could say to your child, well, look there, it's DGE. It's not just J on its own. It's DGE. It's one of those graphemes, like in the word fridge. And you can then talk about other examples that include that exact same grapheme. I think make sure that they recognize it outside of a spelling lesson is crucial. So that is a great way you could help them there with that. With the whole asking what they learn spelling lessons, I understand sometimes you ask your child, what did you do at school today? And the answer usually is, don't know, or they don't want to really talk about it much. But what I would like to do moving forward is on Seesaw on a weekly basis is explain what we have been learning in ELS spellings. So you got an understanding of what your child's been taught, and then you can find ways at home to apply that at home. So if you notice, like going back to the grapheme, when I list all the alternative graphemes, you might want to, when you're reading, see if you can find any of those words that have those alternative graphemes. But also, you could write it on post-it notes and put them around the house, so children keep coming across them and get them practice reading it, spelling it. But also, you could see if you can turn it into a bit of a game where, say, who is a better speller between you and your child. Children always love a good competition, so you could then go for remind them about the spelling that they've learned, and see who can spell these words that you call out better, you or your child. So obviously as well, please make sure that you praise the child every time they've done well with their spellings. It is such a difficult part of the English language to grasp. It does take practice, but even when they've done the smallest incorrect with spelling, it's important that we praise it as much as possible, because even when they've taken that small step forwards, it's a big achievement for the children. So we've got to make sure that we continue to support them and encourage them with the praise. Okay, to summarise, ELS Essential Spelling builds on phonics, teaches spelling through patterns and understanding, and gives children the tools they need to be successful, independent spellers. It's structured, supportive, and designed to help every child thrive. I find this to be a very successful program because it continues on what they learned in phonics in reception and year one. But obviously, it's more focusing now on the spelling side rather than the reading side. But with spellings, I can't stress enough about you doing the spelling sequence that I showed you earlier. Get the children to say the word slowly, robot talk it, sound it out, and then do that again, but with the fingers, and then count how many phonemes are on the word, and then say it one more time again, because that will really help them with their spellings. Make sure, especially, they don't miss out any phonemes when they are spelling their words. What you've got to make sure as well that children are shown various spellings on a daily basis. So when you're reading with the children, do make sure that you point out when a word has an alternative grapheme or might relate to something that the children have seen previously in the spellings that we've been doing. But like I said, I will be making sure that on Seesaw moving forward, I show you what we've been learning in spellings, so you got a good understanding of what your child's learned, and that you can help them further at home. But I want to thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. But if there are any questions you'd like to ask me regarding ELS Essential Spellings, please just email me and I'll happily answer your questions. But I hope you found this useful, and thank you so much, as always, for helping your child with their learning.